Before the story starts, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.
John loved the ocean. Ever since he was a child, he had dreamed of owning a yacht. The feeling of being on the water, with the wind on his face and the waves rocking gently beneath him, made him feel free. And now, at 34, his dream had finally come true. He had bought a sleek, white yacht, big enough to host friends and family, yet small enough to handle on his own. The yacht glimmered in the morning sun as it floated peacefully at the marina. Everything seemed perfect. It was early morning, and the marina was quiet. Seagulls circled above, and the soft sound of water lapping against the dock made John feel calm. He had spent months preparing for this day. He had studied maps of the marina, checked every safety rule, and even paid extra to secure a prime docking spot. It was a private marina, managed by the HOA of the nearby luxury community, and John had always thought that paying the fees meant he had nothing to worry about. He stepped onto the deck, coffee in hand, enjoying the smell of salt and fresh wood polish from the yacht. His phone buzzed. It was a notification from the marina management. John smiled. Maybe it was a routine reminder or some news about the community events. But as he opened it, his smile faded. The message was short. Too short. And strange. Unauthorized docking. Immediate removal required. John blinked. He read it again. Unauthorized docking? That didn't make sense. He had the paperwork. He had paid for the dock. Everything was legal. He took a deep breath, trying to stay calm, but a pit of unease began forming in his stomach. He looked around. The marina was empty, except for a few early risers walking their dogs or jogging. Everything seemed normal. The water shimmered, the sun reflected off the hulls of other boats, and the air smelled like sea salt. But John felt a strange tension in the air, as if the quiet was hiding something. He rushed to check the dock. His yacht was still there. But then he noticed something that made his heart skip a beat. A small notice was nailed to the post of his docking slip. It was official looking, stamped with the HOA seal. His hands trembled as he read the words. This vessel is in violation of HOA regulations. Owner must remove yacht immediately. Failure to comply may result in legal action. John's mind raced. How could this be happening? He had all the documents proving he had the right to dock here. He had paid for the slip in full. He had followed every rule. And yet, here was a formal warning, threatening him. He tried calling the marina office. The phone rang, and then went to voicemail. No one answered. Panic started creeping in. He felt the calm morning he had enjoyed just moments ago slipping away, replaced by anxiety. His yacht wasn't just a boat, it was his dream, his escape, his pride. And now, it was under threat. John decided to take a closer look. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe someone had mixed up his paperwork. He walked along the dock, scanning every detail of the marina. The docks were well maintained, the water clean and clear, and other boats floated peacefully. No one seemed to be paying attention to him. But John couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. As he inspected the notice again, he noticed a faint line of fine print at the bottom. It was almost hidden, but he could read it. Marina ownership and management rights reserved exclusively by HOA board members. Unauthorized docking is subject to enforcement at the discretion of the board. John frowned. Enforcement at the discretion of the board? What did that mean? Could someone on the board just decide they didn't like him? The idea seemed absurd, but the threat was real. Suddenly, a shadow fell across the dock. John looked up. A man in a dark suit was approaching him. He looked official, but his face was stern, almost cold. "You're the owner of this yacht?" the man asked. "Yes," John replied cautiously. "I have all the papers. I paid for this dock." The man didn't answer immediately. He just stared at John, his eyes unreadable. Then he spoke, slowly and clearly. "Your docking privileges have been revoked. You need to remove your vessel immediately. The board has decided." John's stomach sank. The board? Who are these people? He had seen some HOA meetings online, but he had never imagined they could act like this. And why target him, someone who had followed every rule? He tried to reason with the man. I have the contract. I paid for this spot. You can't just. The man interrupted, shaking his head. The board can and does. That's all you need to know. Please comply. John felt a surge of anger and disbelief. This couldn't be happening. His dream, the yacht he had worked so hard for, was being threatened over a technicality, or maybe something else. He didn't know yet. All he knew was that the calm morning had vanished, replaced by fear and confusion. He stepped back, trying to process. What would he do next? Who could help him? He thought of lawyers, of friends who knew the community, of anyone who might understand what was happening. But deep down, he felt something else, a gnawing suspicion that this wasn't just about rules. This felt personal. John looked out over the water, his yacht bobbing gently in the sun. It had been perfect just moments ago. Now it felt like a trap, a symbol of something larger, something he didn't yet understand. The Marina, which had seemed like a peaceful paradise, suddenly felt like a battlefield. And the opponent? Unknown. Powerful. And possibly ruthless. He clenched his fists, taking a deep breath. He wasn't going to give up. Not yet. But he knew one thing, whatever was coming, it was going to be bigger than he had imagined. And it would test him in ways he had never expected. As John stood there, staring at the notice and the approaching man, a thought crossed his mind. Who really owns this place? Because if the board could do this to him, maybe the Marina wasn't as simple as it seemed. Maybe there were secrets hidden behind the calm waters and polished docks. And if that was true, then the fight for his yacht had only just begun. The camera would slowly pan over the yacht, the quiet Marina, and the shadowed faces of the board members walking in the distance, hinting at a storm to come. And in the background, the sound of water lapping would be joined by a low, suspenseful hum, signaling that John's peaceful dream was about to turn into a battle he had never anticipated. John had always been a man of dreams, the kind that people whispered about but rarely chased. Growing up in a small town by the coast, he had spent countless hours watching yachts glide across the horizon, their sails cutting through the golden light of the sunset. He would sit on the beach, notebook in hand, drawing boats he imagined he would one day own. Friends laughed at him, saying, "You'll never own one of those," but John never stopped dreaming. Years passed. He worked long hours in a demanding job, saving every penny, skipping vacations, and avoiding anything that felt unnecessary. While others spent their money on gadgets or cars, John put it all into one goal, owning a yacht of his own. It wasn't about showing off or prestige. It was about freedom, the feeling of leaving everything behind, of being on open water with nothing to worry about but the horizon. Finally, after years of discipline, he found it. A sleek, white yacht, perfect in every way. Not just a boat, it was a symbol of everything he had worked for, every sacrifice he had made. And now it floated at a private marina in a luxurious community, just waiting for him to step aboard. The marina itself seemed perfect at first glance. Modern docks, polished wood, and clean water that reflected the sky like a mirror. Other yacht owners waved politely as they passed, smiles warm but distant, like a world John had finally earned access to. But there was a subtle tension beneath the surface. Rules were strict, and the HOA had a reputation for being rigid. Small mistakes could lead to warnings, or worse. John thought he had covered everything, contracts signed, fees paid, approvals confirmed. He thought he was safe. But there was something else he didn't yet know. The marina wasn't just a place to dock boats. It was a stage, and the HOA board were actors with hidden motives. Some owned shares in the marina. Some wanted control. Some simply enjoyed wielding power over others. And John, with his new yacht and enthusiasm, had unknowingly walked into their world. John had spent the previous weeks preparing for his first solo trip on the yacht. He had checked the engines, cleaned every surface, stocked it with supplies, and even invited a few close friends for a weekend outing. He wanted everything to be perfect. He had imagined the wind in his hair, the sun on his face, the peaceful rhythm of waves carrying him away from stress, bills, and responsibilities. He hadn't imagined tension, fear, or bureaucracy threatening to destroy his dream before he even set sail. Yet the warning from the HOA was real. He couldn't ignore it. That morning, while standing on the dock, reading the letter, John felt a strange mix of disbelief and anger. It wasn't just about the yacht, it was personal. Someone had decided, for reasons unknown, that he didn't belong here. And John had a gut feeling it wasn't just a misunderstanding. To understand why this felt so personal, it was important to look back at how John had ended up here. He had researched every marina within 50 miles, trying to find one that was safe, quiet, and well-managed. He had called the offices, visited in person, asked for contracts and rules in writing. He had checked reviews, talked to other yacht owners, and even visited during peak hours to see how staff handled problems. Everything had seemed perfect. Everything had seemed trustworthy. Until the letter arrived. John began to notice small things he hadn't before. The board members of the HOA weren't just administrators, they were owners of prime marina shares. They had yachts too, and their privileges were absolute. Rules seemed to apply strictly to newcomers but loosely to themselves. Was it possible that this letter was more than a warning? Was it a message, a subtle signal that he wasn't welcome? As he pondered this, a wave of determination rose inside him. John wasn't the type to give up. He had fought for his dream for years. He had sacrificed more than most could imagine. And now, standing in the quiet marina, facing a bureaucracy he didn't fully understand, he knew one thing: he wouldn't let his yacht, his dream, be taken from him without a fight. He remembered the stories his grandfather had told him about the sea, how it could be calm one moment and furious the next. How those who respected it survived, and those who feared it failed. John realized that the marina, with all its rules and hidden powers, was like the sea. He had to navigate carefully, understand its currents, and find the right path. One wrong move, and the consequences could be devastating. At that moment, a sense of both fear and excitement filled him. Fear, because the HOA was powerful and unpredictable. Excitement, because for the first time, John felt alive in a new way. His dream wasn't just floating on water anymore, it was a challenge, a test of courage, wit, and patience. And he had always loved a good challenge. Little did John know, the situation was far more complicated than he could imagine. The HOA's decision wasn't just a bureaucratic error or a simple enforcement of rules. It was the beginning of a chain of events that would uncover secrets, reveal hidden alliances, and force John to confront not just the HOA, but the people behind it, the real owners of the marina. And so, as the sun climbed higher in the sky and the calm marina seemed almost serene again, John made a silent promise. He would not be intimidated. He would not surrender his dream. And he would uncover the truth, no matter what it took. But he didn't know yet just how deep the rabbit hole went or how dangerous the people at the top could be. The first move had been made, but the game was only beginning. And John was about to find out that sometimes, the calmest waters hide the darkest storms. The next morning, John woke up to an unusual quiet. The marina, which usually had the faint sounds of seagulls and distant engines, was eerily silent. He stepped out of his small apartment overlooking the docks, coffee in hand, expecting the peaceful view he had grown to love. But something felt wrong. As he approached his yacht, his stomach twisted. His yacht, it wasn't as he had left it. The hull had scratches along the side, some deep enough to reveal the fiberglass beneath. The ropes were frayed, tied in strange knots, as if someone had tried to move it roughly. A small wooden fender had been cracked and thrown onto the dock. John froze, staring at the damage. His heart raced. He had treated the yacht like it was alive, like it was part of him. And now, this. His hands shook. Before he could process the full shock, his phone rang. It was the Marina office. Hesitant, John answered. "Mr. John?" "This is the HOA office," a cold, clipped voice said. "Your yacht, there were some issues. You should come in immediately." John's jaw tightened. "Issues? What issues?" "Your docking was unauthorized. And, well, some damages occurred. We need to discuss the matter in person. The word unauthorized hit like a punch. Unauthorized? He had the papers. Everything was legal. And now his yacht was damaged? Anger flared inside him, but he forced himself to stay calm. He rushed to the dock, examining the scratches and broken ropes. Someone had moved his yacht deliberately. He could feel it. This wasn't an accident. The marks on the hull, the strangely tied ropes, even the broken fender, it all felt intentional. And then a thought hit him like lightning. The HOA had the power to enforce rules at their discretion. Could this have been them? Could they have damaged his yacht on purpose? He shook his head. No, it couldn't be. That was illegal, wasn't it? And yet, everything pointed that way. The calm, polite HOA letters, the warnings, the mysterious authority, all of it suddenly seemed like part of a plan. John decided to investigate immediately. He snapped pictures of the damage, checked the ropes, and made notes. Then, he walked around the marina, observing other boats. Every other yacht looked untouched. Only his had been harmed. That wasn't random. That was targeted. But who could have done it? And why? As he was thinking, a marina worker approached him, holding a clipboard and looking nervous. "Ah. Mr. John," the worker said. I don't know if I should say this, but the HOA, they've been aggressive with certain boats lately. Especially new ones." John's eyes narrowed. Aggressive? The worker swallowed. Yes, they don't like newcomers, and some boats have been moved if the owner didn't comply quickly enough. I'm not supposed to tell anyone, but it's happened before. John felt a chill run down his spine. He had suspected something, but hearing it confirmed he wasn't imagining it. This was deliberate. Someone had wanted to scare him, maybe even force him to leave. His thoughts raced. Who on the board could do this? And what did they want from him? A wave of frustration hit. He had worked for years for this yacht, for this moment of freedom, and now it was under threat from people hiding behind rules. Determined, John grabbed his phone and called a friend who had some experience with legal matters in luxury communities. "Look, I don't know exactly what's going on, but it looks like the HOA, they're overstepping. They've damaged my yacht and are threatening me with fines and removal." "I need advice," John said, trying to stay calm, though his voice trembled slightly. His friend responded with concern. "John, be careful. Some HOAs can get messy. If they're doing this deliberately, it could get ugly. Document everything, and don't confront them alone. And maybe, check who actually owns the marina. There might be conflicts of interest." John hung up, mind spinning. Who owned the marina? Could this be personal? It had to be. Why target him specifically? And how far would they go to make him comply? He walked back to the yacht and ran his fingers over the scratches, the rough wood of the broken fender. A thought struck him suddenly. This was bigger than just a dock or a fee. The HOA wasn't just enforcing rules, they were sending a message. And if he didn't respond carefully, the next message could be worse. John knew he had to act smart. He couldn't just react. He needed proof, strategy, and perhaps, allies. But first, he needed to understand the full scope of what he was dealing with. He made a silent vow to himself. They think they can intimidate me. They think this yacht is theirs to control. They're wrong. I will get to the bottom of this. And in that moment, as the sun glinted off the marina water and the gentle waves lapped at the dock, John felt the first real surge of determination. The conflict wasn't just about a damaged yacht anymore, it was about justice, pride, and uncovering secrets hidden beneath the calm surface of the marina. Little did he know, the deeper he dug, the more he would discover about the HOA, about the marina, and about just how far some people were willing to go to protect their power. John couldn't sleep that night. The marina was silent, the waves softly brushing against the dock, but his mind was racing. He kept replaying the events of the day, the scratched hull, the broken fender, the cryptic warning letter, and the cold stare of the man from the HOA. It wasn't random. Someone had deliberately targeted him, and the thought made his blood boil. The next morning, he decided he had to find answers. If the HOA could damage his yacht and threaten him with fines, he needed to know who was really in charge. He started with paperwork. He dug out the contracts, receipts, and emails he had carefully saved over the last few weeks. Everything seemed in order. He had every right to dock his yacht. The problem wasn't him, it was something else. Something hidden. John went back to the Marina office. This time, he wasn't looking for permission, he was looking for information. The receptionist smiled politely but avoided his gaze. "Hi, I need some information about the board members. I just want to understand the ownership structure of the Marina," John said casually. The receptionist hesitated. "Oh. I'm not sure, maybe you should talk to the board directly?" John frowned. That was strange. Why would she hesitate? Something about the tone made him uneasy. He felt the first spark of suspicion. The people running this marina weren't just administrators, they had secrets. He decided to dig deeper. Over the next few days, John started asking questions discreetly. He talked to other boat owners, quietly observing their reactions when he mentioned the board. Most gave vague answers or changed the subject. A few even lowered their voices. They own a lot of the marina themselves," one older man admitted reluctantly. "Some of them, let's just say they play favorites. Newcomers sometimes disappear." Disappear? John's heart raced. Not literally, he hoped, but in terms of privileges, maybe even legally. That would explain the sudden targeting of his yacht. He knew he had to be careful. The HOA was powerful, and he was just one man. But he also knew that knowledge was his weapon. He needed proof. He spent hours combing public records, checking property documents, and mapping out the connections between the board members and the marina itself. What he discovered made his blood run cold. Several board members secretly owned the most valuable docks. They had full control over the rules and the fines. They could decide, almost at will, who was welcome and who wasn't. The so-called HOA regulations weren't about fairness, they were about power. And now he realized the scratches and broken fender weren't a mistake, they were a warning. The more John learned, the angrier he became. This wasn't just bureaucracy. It was manipulation. A game of control disguised as rules. And he had unknowingly become a pawn. Determined, John started documenting everything. He took photos of his yacht, kept copies of all letters, and wrote down every suspicious detail he noticed at the marina. He even started recording conversations discreetly whenever he could. Every piece of evidence mattered. One evening, as he reviewed his notes in his small apartment overlooking the marina, his phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "Stop asking questions. Some things are better left alone." John felt a chill. The threat was clear. Someone was watching him. But instead of fear, he felt resolve. He couldn't turn back now. He had already seen too much. The game wasn't just about his yacht anymore, it was about justice and exposing the truth. Over the next few days, John became more careful. He learned the patterns of the board members, when they were likely to be at the marina, who handled fines, and which docks were their private spaces. Every interaction, every smile, every polite nod, he studied it all. And slowly, he started connecting the dots. Then came the breakthrough. John discovered a series of ownership documents hidden deep in public records. It revealed the shocking truth: the HOA president owned nearly half of the marina privately, along with several other members. The rules weren't rules at all, they were tools to protect their wealth and keep newcomers like John under control. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the documents. The scratches, the fender, the warning letter, they all made sense now. The HOA wasn't enforcing fairness. They were enforcing their control. And he had just realized the full scale of the challenge ahead. John knew one thing: confronting them directly without a plan would be dangerous. But staying silent was worse. His yacht, his dream, and his pride were on the line. The fight had only just begun. And deep down, he felt a thrill. He was stepping into a game of power, deception, and secrets, and he was ready to play. Days passed, but the marina felt like a battlefield to John. Every morning, he approached his yacht with caution, scanning for scratches, frayed ropes, or anything unusual. The damage from before had been repaired, but he knew it wouldn't be the last attack. He felt watched. Every glance from the HOA staff, every phone call from an unknown number, every small friendly remark from other boat owners carried an edge. Then, one morning, a thick envelope appeared on the dock near his yacht. It was stamped with the HOA seal. John's hands shook as he picked it up. Inside, he found three things. A legal notice stating he had violated multiple docking rules he hadn't even known existed. An invoice for thousands of dollars in fines for unauthorized docking. A cryptic note in bold handwriting. "We suggest you comply before things get worse." John's heart pounded. The HOA wasn't just threatening him anymore, they were trying to intimidate him financially and emotionally. The scratches on his yacht were just the beginning. He thought back to the public records he had uncovered. The HOA president and board members owned most of the docks and controlled the rules. Their letters and fines weren't just formalities, they were weapons. And now John realized something chilling: he was the target of a power game he hadn't signed up for. That evening, he called a friend who had experience with HOA conflicts. "They're trying to scare you off," his friend said. "And now they're using money to do it. Don't pay anything without proof. Document everything. And whatever you do, don't underestimate them." John hung up and sat in silence, staring at the marina from his apartment window. The lights reflected on the water like tiny warnings. He realized the fight wasn't going to be simple. The board had power, money, and influence. And he was just one man with a yacht, a few documents, and a lot of determination. The next day, John tried to approach the board for answers. He walked into the HOA office calmly, but the tension was thick. The receptionist gave him a tight-lipped smile, then disappeared into a back room. Minutes later, the HOA president emerged. Tall, confident, and perfectly composed, he gave John a polite nod, but his eyes were cold. "Mr. John," the president said smoothly, "we hope you understand the seriousness of your situation. Our rules exist to protect the community. We suggest you comply." John clenched his fists. "I've complied. I have every document, every receipt. My docking is legal. Why are you threatening me?" The president smiled faintly, almost like a predator amused by its prey. "Sometimes, compliance is about more than legality. It's about respecting boundaries. And some boundaries are invisible." John left the office, his mind spinning. Invisible boundaries? They weren't even trying to hide the fact that they had power, they were flaunting it. He realized the HOA wasn't just a group of rules makers. They were manipulators, and he had walked straight into their game. That evening, another incident occurred. One of the marina workers, a young man John had noticed before, discreetly handed him a USB drive. "I think you should see this," the worker whispered, looking nervous. "It's best if no one finds out I gave it to you." John took the USB back to his apartment and plugged it into his laptop. What he found made his blood run cold: emails and internal documents showing that the HOA board had deliberately targeted new yacht owners to seize control of docking spaces, enforce fines, and maintain dominance. Some of the members had even secretly sold their docks to themselves while threatening others with penalties. It was all a calculated plan. John leaned back, stunned. The scratches, the fines, the threats, they weren't random. They were part of a carefully orchestrated scheme. And now, he realized, the stakes were much higher than just a damaged yacht. He could fight. But he needed a plan. He needed proof, witnesses, and a strategy. He couldn't just confront them blindly. And he couldn't underestimate them. They had power, connections, and influence that could ruin him if he misstepped. That night, John paced his apartment, thinking of every possible move. He would have to play smart, move cautiously, and gather allies. But one thing was certain: he wouldn't back down. The fight wasn't just about his yacht anymore. It was about exposing the truth and reclaiming control of something that was rightfully his. The next morning, he returned to the marina, a new determination in his step. Every look, every smile, every action was part of the game. And John was ready to start playing it. Little did he know, the confrontation he had been preparing for was about to escalate even further. The HOA would soon reveal their full power, and John would be forced to make choices that could change everything: his dream, his reputation, and maybe even his safety. The day John had been preparing for finally arrived. He walked to the marina with a calm he didn't feel, his laptop bag slung over his shoulder. Inside were copies of the USB files, printed emails, photos of the damaged yacht, and notes documenting every suspicious activity. He wasn't just showing up to argue, he was showing up to prove a case. The marina seemed quieter than usual. Even the seagulls were absent. The calm water reflected the morning sun, but beneath that reflection, John felt a storm brewing. He reached the HOA office and was immediately met by the receptionist, who looked uneasy as she gestured him inside. The board members were there, seated at a long polished table, their faces neutral but their eyes sharp. The president, tall and composed, sat at the center, exuding authority. The air in the room was thick with unspoken tension. "Mr. John," the president began smoothly, "we received your request to meet. Please, state your concerns." John took a deep breath. "I'm here because my yacht has been damaged, I've received threatening letters, and I've discovered evidence showing that several board members have been targeting new boat owners, including me, for personal gain. I want answers." The room fell silent. The president's face didn't change, but his eyes flickered briefly toward the other board members. "Evidence," the president said, voice calm, almost teasing. "And what evidence might that be?" John opened his laptop and displayed the emails and documents from the USB drive. He walked the board members through each email, each transaction, each threatening letter. Photos of the scratches on his yacht were shown. He read aloud some of the internal messages where members discussed fines, docking control, and targeting newcomers. The board members exchanged glances. One of them, a woman with sharp features, shifted uncomfortably. Another, older and balding, stared at the ceiling. But the president remained composed until John displayed the final document, a secret ownership registry showing that he personally owned half the marina docks while enforcing fines on others for the same spaces. The room went silent, the tension almost audible. "You," the president said, his voice lower now. "You've uncovered things that were meant to remain private." "Yes," John said firmly. "And now I know why my yacht was targeted. You weren't enforcing rules. You were protecting your own interests and punishing anyone who questioned your control. This ends today." The president leaned back in his chair, a faint smirk forming. "Impressive. But do you really think exposing this will change anything? Rules are rules. Ownership is ownership. You have no power here." John felt a surge of adrenaline. He leaned forward, showing another folder from the USB. This one contained recorded conversations, witnesses' statements, and proof of threats sent to other yacht owners. He laid them out on the table. The room shifted. The other board members exchanged worried whispers. The president's smirk faded, replaced with a sharp edge of anger. He realized John wasn't just making accusations, he had proof. "This isn't just about docking," John said, voice steady. "This is about fairness, transparency, and respecting the law. You can't intimidate me, and you can't manipulate the rules anymore." A long silence followed. Then, surprisingly, the president spoke in a quieter, more controlled voice. "You are right," he admitted, after a pause. "We may have overstepped. But not everything is as simple as it seems. Some decisions were made to protect the community." John raised an eyebrow. "Protect the community? By damaging yachts and threatening owners?" The president hesitated, then leaned back. "Perhaps, in our pursuit of control, we forgot the human side of these rules." John exhaled slowly, sensing the subtle shift. Victory wasn't complete, but the first cracks were visible. The board's power, though vast, was built on secrecy, and he had just shattered that secrecy. He closed his laptop and stood tall. I came here to defend my yacht, my rights, and my dream. I hope this is a turning point. Because if not, I will take this further, legally, publicly, whatever it takes." The president nodded, a thin, reluctant acknowledgement. John felt the room's tension ease slightly, though he knew the fight wasn't entirely over. What mattered was that he had confronted the source, revealed the truth, and shown he wasn't intimidated. As John left the room, he glanced back. The board members were watching, quiet and tense, knowing that their hidden motives had been exposed. Outside, the marina sparkled in the sunlight, calm and peaceful once again, but John knew better. The surface was calm, but below, currents of power, deception, and greed ran deep. He walked to his yacht, running his hands over the polished wood, feeling the scratches that had once angered him now seemed like battle scars, proof of his resilience and determination. He had faced the board, uncovered the truth, and survived. And in that moment, John realized something important. Dreams could be challenged, even threatened, but courage, patience, and persistence could protect them. And no one, not even the most powerful HOA board, could take that away. The next morning, the marina seemed almost peaceful, the sunlight glinting off the calm water. But John knew better. He had faced the board, uncovered their corruption, and survived the confrontation, but he also knew that the real power of the HOA ran deeper than anyone had imagined. He returned to his yacht, checking the ropes and hull once again. Everything was intact now, yet every scratch, every mark on the polished wood reminded him of the battle he had fought. As he ran his hands over the deck, a thought struck him. The fight wasn't just about his yacht, it was about truth, fairness, and standing up to those who abused power. Just then, a call came in. It was the marina manager, his voice unusually formal. "Mr. John, we need to speak. The board has requested a meeting with you today." John agreed, though he felt a mix of curiosity and caution. When he arrived, the board members were already seated, their expressions unreadable. But something was different this time. The president, usually so composed and intimidating, looked uneasy. "Mr. John," he began, his voice measured, "after reviewing your evidence and reconsidering our actions, we acknowledge that mistakes were made. You were targeted unfairly, and your yacht should never have been damaged. We apologize for the distress caused." John listened carefully, sensing a subtle shift. The apology seemed sincere, but he didn't relax. He had learned the hard way that appearances could be deceiving. Then came the twist. The president leaned forward, lowering his voice slightly. "There is one more thing you should know. The marina's ownership structure, it's more complicated than we admitted. Technically, we control the docks, but several of us are also investors in larger maritime projects. The targeting of your yacht, it was part of a larger plan to consolidate control, not just over this marina, but other marinas nearby." John's eyes widened. This wasn't just a local HOA problem. This was a network of power, greed, and influence. But now he had the knowledge and the proof. "You mean, all of this was about control and money?" John asked, his voice calm but edged with disbelief. "Yes," the president admitted. "And you exposed it. You challenged us and survived. Few have the courage or wit to do that." John leaned back, absorbing the truth. The scratches, the letters, the fines, they had all been part of a calculated plan. And yet, he had stood firm, documented everything, and confronted the board with undeniable proof. The president sighed. "We will remove all fines and officially acknowledge your docking rights. Your yacht and your reputation are intact. But, understand this, Mr. John, knowledge is power. And now you possess it." John smiled faintly. He had won, but the fight had taught him more than victory. He had learned about the hidden currents of power, the risks of standing out, and the strength of persistence. He also realized that the calm waters of the marina could never be taken for granted again, but he was ready. Walking back to his yacht, he ran his hands over the polished deck. The scratches that had once angered him now felt like battle scars, reminders of the fight he had endured. He stepped aboard, letting the sun warm his face, and took a deep breath. The marina was peaceful, but John knew better than to assume the calm would last forever. Power, secrecy, and ambition didn't disappear, they only shifted. But he had something stronger than fear: knowledge, courage, and resolve. He looked out at the horizon, the water stretching endlessly. The wind whispered across the deck, carrying a sense of freedom he had fought so hard to protect. His yacht wasn't just a boat, it was a symbol of persistence, of standing up for what was right, and of refusing to be intimidated. And as the sun reflected off the calm waves, John realized one final truth: dreams can be challenged, manipulated, and attacked, but courage, preparation, and resilience will always protect them. With that thought, he started the engine. The yacht glided smoothly away from the dock, cutting through the water like a knife. Behind him, the marina glimmered under the sunlight, its secrets now exposed. Ahead, the open sea beckoned, endless and free, waiting for John and the adventures yet to come. The battle was over, but the story of courage, truth, and defying power would linger in memory, inspiring anyone who dared to stand firm in the face of injustice.
Thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed it.